Biracial politics in America. Part 2, lying. Nothing works when it starts with a lie. I don't think it works personally. I don't think it works professionally. And I'm praying it doesn't work for the former president politically. I'm going to discuss some of the lies that Donald Trump has told, the former president. And I have abbreviated my list twice. One time on my own, and the second time when my little executive producer, number one son, said, hey, cut to the chase, man. Well, what's the reason of the podcast? It's not to talk about all the lies that Donald Trump said. And he's right. But it does create the foundation for what I'm going to talk about. And before you tune out, if you're a MAGA, you're a Republican or a Trump supporter, I'm going to tell you a little bit about yourself. I'm going to tell you 3 reasons why you're a Trump supporter. And you're not going to like it. So if you stick around, you're forewarned. But this podcast is to let people know that, first of all, race is still an undercurrent in our political process, and that we can overcome race through basic humanity. And I'll get to that. But first, let's start with lies. At the time of this podcast, we've just had our second major hurricane hit Florida and a lot of the states in the southern region of the United States, southern east region. Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. Hurricane Milton was a beast, and it has done a lot of damage. And just in the last week, former President Trump and the Republican Party have told a series of lies that has not only hurt people because it told them, hey, $750 is all you're going to get from FEMA. And the reason you're only getting $750 is because they used all the FEMA money on migrants, on illegal immigrants, which is a lie. Also, a lot of people that vote Republican aren't applying for these services because they think that what they're hearing is correct. And they're hearing it in their echo chamber, the Fox Newses of the world, so that they don't know that these are federal funds that are available to them. And they're not even applying. So they're hurting a lot of their own supporters. Not to mention, some of the FEMA people are now getting death threats because the MAGA universe is thinking, oh, well, they're not here to help me. Then what good are they? They need to get gone. And they have actually arrested people that intended to hurt FEMA workers. They've actually shut down certain locations where FEMA workers are actually going door to door trying to help people and seeing what assistance they may need. Now they're pulling them back to these areas that can be protected. And people have to come to them. And if you've lost everything, you have to now leave your house to go to a FEMA center to try to get federal assistance. And it doesn't just stop with the lies about hurricanes, although it's just hateful and it's not helping that area. But during the campaign, President Trump went to Aurora, Colorado and talked about how Venezuelan gangs are taking over Aurora, Colorado. And he told so many lies, even Republican political leaders had to come out and go, this is a bunch of, you know what, it's not true. Okay, these Venezuelan gangs are not running Aurora, Colorado. And when members of your own party have to come out and, just say what you said was blatantly false and having to clean it up, that's a problem. That's a big problem. So Trump also, in the same week, goes, to another city, Detroit, Michigan, and is talking to the Economic Club in Detroit, and he's saying, if we're not careful, if you don't vote for me, every place is going to be a pit and going to be a horrible city like Detroit. He said this while in Detroit. I mean, you just can't make it up. You absolutely can't make it up. And that's just 1 week, Monday through Friday. Okay, I mean, the Washington Post conservatively estimated that Trump has lied over 30,000 times. That's a conservative estimate. I mean, remember when a president wearing a tan suit was a big deal? Imagine if that president, the one that wore the tan suit, had told 30,000 lies. Yeah, we'd be having a different discussion today. And speaking of the former president, I love what he said about, former President Trump. He has this weird obsession with crowd sizes. And I remember during his inauguration, he had his spokesman at the time, Spicer, come out and go, there were more people at President Trump's inauguration than any other inauguration in history, period. I mean, he made that poor guy come out and just tell that lie. It was unbelievable. But he does have this thing with crowd sizes. I remember recently he talked about how when he spoke in Washington, he drew more people than Dr. King did. Yes, the Dr. King of the I Have a Dream speech during the March on Washington. He had more people in Washington than during that speech. Like I said, you just can't make it up. Let's shift to COVID. Remember that when we had a pandemic? Well, Donald Trump was the president. And I mean, come on. It's going to go away with the warmer weather. He even did a live press conference where he had his poor assistant, the lady that was sitting on the side, and he goes, well, what if we inject bleach and do some type of cleansing that way? And the poor lady was trying to hide her face in her hands. She was just so embarrassed. Not only for the administration that she was part of it. I think she was just embarrassed that, that something that irresponsible came out of the president's mouth on live television. And over 1 million Americans died during this pandemic, and because it was mishandled. I mean, some famous people like Herman Cain, I remember he was at a super spreader event at the White House. He was dead in a couple of weeks. But there were so many workers and so many citizens that couldn't get test kits that were sent to Vladimir Putin and, God knows who else, that Americans couldn't get their hands on to get tested. And all of a sudden, all these workers are essential workers, so they have to show up. And a lot of them, unfortunately, lost their lives. And let me tell you, that COVID was some wicked stuff. I know my mother-in-law was vaccinated and boosted when she caught COVID. And she was saying her goodbye. She's like, I love her. I mean, she thought that was the end. It was pretty severe. And this was someone who was vaccinated and boosted. So before those vaccines hit, remember how paranoid everybody was? I know we had a cleansing station at our front door. We were wiping down packages. I mean, nobody knew what was going on. And it was horrible. Well, let's move back to lying. How about the big lie? The big lie about who won the 2020 election. Let's face it, that big lie has led to a lot of turmoil in this country. Not the least of which is the January 6th riots, right? And again, I'm talking about facts, okay, not opinion. So if you go, oh, well, Robert, that wasn't a riot. Really? When you storm a building and take over a building and overcome the security of that building, police officers, when people die because of that takeover, when you have to take the vice president of the United States and move him to a secure location because of your supporters going into that building, how can you call it anything other than a riot? And if anyone has seen video of the January 6th occupation of Congress, you would say it's a riot. And to call it anything less, again, maybe your opinion, but there are facts that trump your opinion. And as the great saying goes, you can have your own opinion. You can't have your own facts. And when, over 100 police officers get beat within an inch of their life, one police officer actually died, a protester actually got shot trying to enter the chambers within the halls of Congress. This was a deadly insurrection. they had a functioning gallows outside the grounds, and they were talking about hang Mike Pence. And what was President Trump doing at the time? Nothing. Absolutely nothing for hours. And when he did do something, it normally made it worse. When he tweeted that, Vice President Pence didn't have the guts to do what was right, that's when they were saying hang Mike Pence and looking for him. That's when he had to move him to a secure location. Again, these are lies. And the lies have consequences. They have huge consequences. Ask the 277 rioters that have been convicted and sentenced to prison. Again, not my opinion. These are facts that you can search. And let's talk about his new vice presidential running mate. Of course, he had to have a new one because he wanted the last one hung. So, someone's not going to run with you when you try to have them killed. So J.D. Vance, during his debate with Governor Walz just flat out asked him during the debate, did Donald Trump win the 2020 election? And man, J.D. Vance was like dancing. He's like, well, I like to look forward. I don't like to look back. I mean, it was really just, it was sad. It was sad that was his answer. And as Governor Walz said, it was a damning non-answer. Let's not even get into the E. Jean Carroll conviction for sexual assault and defamation. Let's go to the 34 felony convictions. Think about it. If you're a supporter of Donald Trump, you're supporting a candidate, a former president, who has been convicted by a jury of 34 felonies. That means 34 lies, because Trump said one thing and the evidence during trial said another. So when he was convicted of lying 34 times. And there are misdemeanors and there are felonies. He's a 34-time convicted felon that is running for president. Try to say that out loud to yourself and then manage to go down to the voting booth and vote for him. I don't understand how you can do it. Not to mention the special counsel, Jack Smith, has come out with a revised, case filing for his trial, because the Supreme Court has basically said, the president can do anything within his presidential powers and it's not a criminal act. Well, Jack Smith had plenty of other evidence that he could refile that wasn't a presidential act that Donald Trump did. So there are a lot of things that we can just basically say these are provable lies. Well, one of my favorite guys is Bob Woodward. He has a new book coming out called War. But before that, he had the Trump tapes. So you ever notice how Trump calls everybody a liar? He even calls Bob Woodward a liar now that he has a regular book and he's coming out with, all these facts in the new book. But when he came out with the Trump tapes, Trump was really quiet except for on those tapes, because Bob Woodward comes with receipts. Again, you can have your own opinion, you can't have your own facts. And Bob Woodward comes with facts. He comes with receipts. I cannot wait for that new book to come out. The movie The Apprentice has come out, and that's a liberal interpretation of Trump's life, but I can't wait for that book. But let's face it, you know all this, okay? You know all this. You know he's a liar. You know he cheated on his first wife with his second wife. He cheated on his third wife with a porn star while his third wife was at home with his newborn son. You know all this about him, okay? Here's why you're voting for him. There are 3 characteristics you have as a Trump supporter that are the reason you're voting for Trump. One is greed. Simple greed. You want those tax cuts again. You're wealthy and you want to stay wealthy. And you don't give a rat's behind who's hurt and how much it adds to the national debt as long as you get yours. I literally have clients that have told me I make more and my business makes more during a Republican administration, so I want a Republican administration. I don't give a crap who's the head of it. It's just simple greed. You want to make sure you get yours. And full disclosure, I mean, my wife and I have been married over 26 years. We're both agreed. We do well. You know, we've made a little coin in those 26 years. So we did benefit from some of the Trump tax cuts. Now, the reason I can say that, because you may consider us wealthy. Again, you can have your own opinion. You can't have your own facts. But we're not rich, because I believe if you're rich, you don't have to wake up tomorrow and go to work. Your bills are paid. Your money's making money. And enough money where you don't have to go to work. If you don't have to go to work and you can still make a good living, in my opinion, you're rich. And I think, by most people's opinion, you're rich. But I did benefit, full disclosure, from some of those tax cuts. But I don't look at decisions based on my situation. I grew up as an Army brat, and my wife grew up with modest means. So we think about how we grew up and how we would be in that situation. And we've had times in our marriage where, you know, it was tight. It was tight. She's been laid off at her job. I've had a studio that I sold and got cheated out of the profits by a business partner. So we've gone through some lean times. And if you've been a couple for any length of time, maybe you have too. But greed is just when you don't care about anybody else other than yourself and other than you getting yours. And if you're a Trump supporter, you're greedy. You're greedy. You want those tax cuts again, and you just don't care about anybody else. This second thing you may push back on. You're a racist. And you're like, whoa, I may be greedy. I may like my money, but you can't call me a racist, Robert. You don't know me. Yeah, I do. See, racists don't just necessarily, we're not talking about lynchings. We're not talking about burning a cross in a yard. There are all sorts of forms of racism. You know, my late father-in-law was a white guy in his 70s, and I knew there was a time where he ran shit in this country, where white men ran stuff, and they were the kings of their household, and they were going to get the first job. There were times when blacks couldn't get certain jobs, but whites could. There are certain times when redlining, where black people couldn't live in a certain neighborhood, but whites could. Okay? Race has been an undercurrent, and so make America great again means make America back to where white people ran stuff. Okay? And I wouldn't look at my late father-in-law and call him a racist, but he had some race-leaning tendencies, let's say. But I don't think they were mean-spirited. He loved me, he loved our family, and he was always supportive of his daughter and the person that she eventually married. So there's all sorts of racism. And if you want to hurt migrants that are trying to seek asylum, you're racist. If you agree with them being bused to states and not being told where they're going. And how about the child separation policy? I don't give a crap what administration put that in play. It should have been shut down during the Trump administration, and it better be shut down under the Biden-Harris administration. But it's a horrible policy, and there are hundreds of children that will never be reconnected to their parents. Think about that. Maybe you don't have kids, but you know somebody that does. And imagine your nieces or your nephews or friends of yours and their children separated from their parents and never told where they were and having no way to reunite them. That's racist. That's mean-spirited, lynching, burning a cross in the yard type racism. So if you vote for the Republican Party and you vote for Donald Trump, you're voting for racist policies. And if you don't believe me, you haven't looked at their almost 1,000-page manifesto called 2025. And before you go, oh, well, Robert, you're talking about having your own facts. Donald Trump has denied that. Really? Has he? Because he's mentioned a few hundred times in those almost 1,000 pages. And by the way, we bought a copy, read it cover to cover, okay? And it's a little under 900 pages, but it covers everything that the Republican administration is going to do if Donald Trump's put back in office. And they're already recruiting people. And that is racist. It is excluding groups of people. And those people may be Haitians, you know? It may be Mexicans coming over the border. Okay, it may be people that were born here or United States citizens, but their parents may not be. It may be wanting to deport and get rid of the bad blood, quote unquote, from Donald Trump in this country. Which brings up my last thing that Trump supporters and MAGA supporters are. They're apathetic. They have no apathy or lack of interest in others and their issues. They could give a rat's behind what's going on in a migrant's life, what's going on in a poor household who's sitting down, you know, with 10 bills, but only enough money to pay 6 of them. They don't care about people who are stretching their insulin. They don't care about how much insulin costs and the fact that the cap has been put on how much insulin, and they don't care about that. They don't sell insulin at their country club. All they care about is keeping the people that they care about safe, secure, and rich. You have to get outside your bubble, your ecosystem. I love a story I read online about a dude with a truck. All right, this is a white guy. He heard about the natural disaster. I don't know if it was Helena or Milton, but he heard about it, and he said, you know what? I've got a Starlink system. I've got some cash. I've got some provisions. I'm going to help some people. So he drove to a flood-ravaged area, set up the Starlink so people could use their cell phones, gave out all his provisions, gave out all the cash he had, went back and got more cash and got more provisions. Unbelievable, man. And I mean, that's just one dude with a truck. Now, my wife would be the first to tell you, if I took my SUV and drove to a flood-ravaged area, within 24 hours, I would need help. I'm not that dude. But you know what? I can support an organization that has those dudes. I can support buying provisions for people that want to go help, such as religious and organizations like maybe Rotary or Kiwanis, civic organizations. But that's just one guy in a truck. And that's what you're missing if you're a Trump supporter or if you're a Republican. Because you can't be a Republican without being a Trump supporter. It's the party of Trump, pure and simple. But there is one final word that I think is the solution. Empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share feelings of another. It transcends race. It doesn't, that guy that got his truck and got his Starlink and got his cash, he didn't say, I'm going to drive to a white area or a black area. He saw that people needed help. And he got off his ass and he did something. Man, I love people that get shit done. I'm an Army brat. And that's one thing you can say about a military family and a military community. If someone's in trouble, everybody pitches in and they get shit done. And I love organizations like the Red Cross because they've always been there in national disasters. You want to know who to give to the American Red Cross. But that brings up a point. Florida was hit, all right, twice, hard, especially with Milton. That's one state. We have 49 other states. And before you come back at me, oh, Robert, if I live in Hawaii, you expect me to get on a plane? If I live in Alaska, you expect me to pack up my truck? No, I don't. As I told you, I'm not that dude. I'm not going to pack up a truck. But as I also told you, my wife and I have done well. We can stroke a check. We can send a donation to the Red Cross. We can call the governor's office in Florida and say, hey, what do you guys need? What organizations are on the ground there that we can support with our dollars or send provisions to? You know, we got an Amazon account. You know, where can we send provisions? Think about it. If 49 other states have those type of dudes with a truck, or you finance dudes with trucks, or you give your money to the Red Cross, if 49 other states have tens of thousands of people, you know who's figured this out? Politicians. Politicians have figured it out, even the ones I support. I get those text messages, hey, just give $5 or $10 to XYZ candidate. You know what they figured out? $5 and $10 adds up to tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars. Okay? $5 or $10, folks, is a Starbucks visit. Come on, we've all been there, right? For me, it's more like $10 because I always get something with the coffee. We can afford a $5 or $10 donation to a state that's been hit by a natural disaster. We all can. Okay? I remember when things were tight. Okay? I still got coffee. I still ate out. Okay? Things aren't as lean as we would like to say when we can't afford $5 or $10. Okay, it's funny, I always see these places that are supposed to be so poor, and I see people walking around with $1,000 cell phones. It's always curious to me. So my point is, you don't have to be that dude with the truck. You can be that man or that woman with $5 or $10, but you have to have empathy. You have to care about people outside of your country club, outside of your neighborhood, outside of your home. I mean, I live in a little cul-de-sac. Each of the homes, 3 homes in my cul-de-sac has been hit by lightning. One almost burned down. We lost a tree that had to have it removed, which is very expensive, by the way. And another home was hit and had to be repaired. But my point is, each of the homes in my cul-de-sac has been hit by a natural disaster, lightning. You think you're large and in charge? You let there be 5 feet of standing water in your home. Oh, well, that can't happen to me, Rob. Well, a lot of people online that I saw didn't think it could happen to them. I saw one lady had to creep, and then there was a area that was risen, and then it rose to a road, then it rose up again to get to her yard. And she says, man, I know the storm is bad, but it's never even gotten to the road. 48 hours later, the water was outside her window of her house. And they had to evacuate her house because they thought the river was going to take her house. I'm telling you, you think you're large and in charge? You let there be 5 feet of water in your house like some of these people have had. You let your car be floating down the street. You won't be as large and in charge as you think you are. And a lot of people think they have flood insurance and they don't. You need to look into that, especially if you live in Florida. Okay, I don't know how anybody can live in that state and not have flood insurance. And maybe they can't get it. I know a lot of insurers are going to go, we're out of here after all these natural disasters and paying for all these homes to be rebuilt. Empathy, folks. We have to care about other people. That's the answer. And you can't care about other people if the leader of your party is always putting other people down or insulting or attacking. And that's all he has. Listen to a speech. As Vice President Harris said, go to one of his rallies. I love, just recently in Coachella, he bussed all these people in the middle of the desert to a rally with 20 buses from 3 different parking lots. Guess what? One bus was left to take him back. He left his supporters high and dry. And it's such a good example of his whole political campaign. You show up for me because I need to keep myself out of prison, and I need to get my grievances settled, and I need to go after my enemies. He never talks about the American people. He never says what he's going to do for you. It's all about him. You've got to understand that. The people that went to the Coachella rally understand it. I don't know if he's going to get any of those votes, because if they do, they are hardcore MAGA. Because you leave my family out in the desert to fend for themselves. And some of these people were elderly. I mean, some of these people were passing out. It's a desert. I mean, come on. What is it going to take for you to wake up? You know what it's going to take? You have to stop being greedy. You have to stop being a racist. You have to stop being apathetic about other people's plights. And you have to start injecting yourself with some empathy and start caring about other people and be one of those 49 states that gives to the state that's in trouble, because one day it may be your state. I live in Georgia. Lord knows We can get tornadoes in a heartbeat, thunderstorms move through here and wipe out things in a heartbeat. We even get hit by some of the hurricane surge, and have standing water all over the place on the interstates, that's wreaking havoc all over the place. We have restaurants and homes that are flooded here, just not on a massive basis like in Florida. But folks, you cannot support hate. You can't support it and have this country move forward. So look at those three things within yourself. Do you express empathy? Again, not opinion, fact. Do you donate to the Red Cross? Do you donate to charities that are helping these people? Have you done anything like that? Or have you given it to a billionaire to run his campaign and to pay his legal bills? These are the questions you have to ask. Because in part 3, after you choose a side and after you see which party is lying, then it's time for enlightenment. Okay? My mother used to say, when you know better, you do better. And in part 3, I'm going to coach you on how to do better. And by the way, I'm going to be doing it myself. So I'm not going to be preaching at you. I'm just going to be saying, as a collective American community, this is how we can thrive. So part 3 is coming next week. I hope you've enjoyed this series so far, and I pray all the best for you and your family.